Right now, you should not buy the AMD 7900 XTX. I'm going to tell you the reason why, and it's not the usual NVIDIA versus AMD type of arguments, even though the 4070 Ti is out today, and it's kind of a weird coincidence and really bad for AMD that they had to actually make an announcement today and admit that there are certain problems and there may be a really big recall coming. Now, as of now, we know that probably the reference editions that are made by AMD, but also sold by its partners like Power Color, Sapphire, those are the ones that are probably having the issues. It's hard to say how many. Some people, Igor's Labs, have been doing some analysis of the situation, talking to sources. They say it could be several batches, which could end up being tens of thousands of affected GPUs. And even judging by some of the comments that you guys have left on my videos telling me that your GPU had this problem and you ended up returning it, it's definitely going to be a really big amount, because I never really saw that many people talk about the 4090 problem aside from Reddit. So this could be a really big widespread issue. That's why I would recommend not buying the 7900 XTX specifically right now. Yes, they say it's most likely going to be that reference model, but what if it isn't? Even if right now it seems like it's the reference models mostly affected, it's some type of a cooling issue. I'm going to read you AMD's statement. We don't know yet if it could possibly affect some AIB models, or they could have their own issues. We really have to wait a little bit and see what's going on, because if you do buy a GPU, you may not be able to return it in a timely fashion, leaving you in GPU purgatory. So first, let me read you AMD's statement that they said today. They basically said, "We are working to determine the cause of the unexpected performance limitation of AMD Radeon RX 7900 XTX graphics cards. Based on our observations, to date, we believe the issue is related to the thermal solution used in AMD's reference design and is occurring in a limited number of cards sold. We are working to resolve this issue for the affected cards. Customers experiencing this unexpected limitation should contact AMD's support." So there are actually several issues that I have with this particular statement. Even let's start right at the end there, contact AMD support. I tried to do that myself just to see what would happen if there's a clear path to support, and I came up with an error message saying that the site was down for maintenance. This was the AMD link given to me when I purchased my GPU directly from AMD, and it said the site was down for maintenance until January 5th, and you had to go to like a community forums and other methods to contact AMD, which at this time is not really a good time, because imagine if my GPU did have that problem like other people's have had, and you'd be stuck not being able to talk to AMD to get an RMA or get some solution as to what's going on. So their response, and especially launching during the holiday time, as a lot of people were out of their offices. I can understand that people go on vacation, but they should have planned this launch better. You don't just launch a week before Christmas and expect there to be no issues at all, or people to respond to these issues until like weeks later, when it's already a problem that's been blown out of proportion possibly, or maybe the problem isn't blown out of proportion yet if it's thousands that they have to recall. So let's break down their statement here. They say a performance limitation of the 7900 XTX graphics cards. By performance limitation, basically the GPU thermal throttles and downclocks itself, not giving you the full performance that you would expect. This is just an easy way of saying that, it's a defective cooler that's causing the GPU to overheat too much. And then they do say that it's related to the thermal solution used in the reference design, and they said limited number of cards sold. So Der Bauer kind of said that it's possibly something to do with the vapor chamber of the GPU, and it's a little bit hard to diagnose it because you actually have to open it up. It's a difficult thing to do, and I'm sure that the board partners now and AMD are taking a look to see exactly what's happening. So first, we thought it could have been mounting pressure issues. It could have been thermal pads, thermal paste. NVIDIA has had these problems in the past as well. But here, AMD, especially after a rocky launch, not really living up to certain expectations in terms of performance. And even though the price is cheaper than NVIDIA, it's kind of seeming now that it's better to go to NVIDIA if you want a more reliable solution. And that's unfortunate for AMD right on the day that the 4070 Ti has launched. We're going to talk a little bit more about that because I feel like that's going to be a really important factor with the timing of it all. Let's get to the last point here. Of course, they say it's a reference design and limited number of cards sold. Now, when my Micro Center had launch day GPUs, all of them were reference designs. Usually, you don't see that. Like with other AMD GPUs, you would see the AIB cards, you would see stuff like from Power Color. So definitely was unusual to see that many reference designs, meaning that I've seen some sources say that they had upwards of 30,000 on launch day of reference designs, which may not be a limited number. And judging by the amount of people that we've seen complain and saying that, you know, from sources inside, from where Igor Labs have talked to people inside the different AIB partners, they said it could be several batches, tens of thousands of GPUs affected. So potentially not really a limited number. It's not like the 4090 adapter issue, which was a limited number. That was only a very small incidence rate of user error of plugging it in as it came to be. So here, this all comes at a very bad time because the 4070 Ti, literally the reviews are dropping today and it's being unveiled. Of course, it's launching actually tomorrow when people can buy it. So that's going to give people one day to think, well, why would I buy the 7900 XTX? I mean, I'm even telling you not to buy it, not because the price is bad or because the performance is bad, because let's say if you buy it and yours has this thermal issue, you're going to have to wait in line for AMD to give you a replacement. Right now, they said they don't know if they have enough replacements. You're going to be waiting potentially for weeks, maybe months until they have enough. You guys know what the GPU shortages have done to supply lines and things like that. So this is possibly catastrophic and you're going to be without a GPU. You may risk getting either a good or a bad GPU copy. I happen to have a reference 7900 XTX. My particular copy seems to be fine. I tested it in different orientations. I tried to stress test different things. I did not get a very high junction temperature. Mine typically stayed in the 80s. Maybe some games, if the case got warm, it would go up to like 90, but I definitely never saw anything close to or above 100C, which is well below 110 degrees Celsius junction temperature that people are actually experiencing right now. So I would recommend that you don't buy it. What if you get one that's overheating? You're not going to want to use it and you're going to have to return it and maybe be without a GPU. And then think of all that. What about the 4070 Ti? And you see that on the shelf. Of course, you're going to think $799. Wait, it's cheaper than the 7900 XT or the XTX. And even though it may not perform nearly as well, some of the numbers put it pretty close to the 7900 XT, pretty close to the 3090 Ti. I've been watching and seeing some of the reviews today. It doesn't seem like a terrible value if the only other option is a problematic GPU. Wouldn't you rather have something that actually works? I mean, as sad as it is, if you're buying a GPU in that price range, your option right now, it's something that just works without an issue. That's not the first thing we usually look at. We look at price to performance, other attributes and features of a GPU. But what does it matter if the XTX is $200 more with a significantly better performance if your copy may not be usable and maybe just run really hot and you're not going to want to run it at all and you have to wait months potentially to get a different copy? That's not going to be a very positive solution. And of course, you may have to chase down an AIB model, which is even more difficult as the XTX has been sold out. We don't know what the availability of the 4070 Ti is going to be yet. We're going to see that tomorrow. That's why you guys should subscribe, smash that like button for continued coverage. But I have a feeling NVIDIA probably has a lot of them lined up. They've been stocking them up ever since the 4080 12GB. So they may really have a 1-2 punch against AMD here. People are not going to buy the AMD GPUs and they're just going to give up. There's no other GPU coming out in the next few months in that price range. This is going to be the cheapest next generation GPU that anyone can currently buy. $799 is expensive for a 70 class GPU, but it's cheaper than even the XT. The only other options you have are last generation GPU, and even a 3090 Ti is still pretty expensive on the used market. You may pay more for that than you're going to do for a brand new 4070 Ti, and a lot of people will prefer to go with that. Even though it has half the VRAM, DLSS 3.0 for some games that support it may be nice, and other features, having a brand new GPU as opposed to used. So As you can see here, the deck is getting stacked really heavily against AMD, and maybe Nvidia got lucky. Even with a $799 price on a 4070 Ti, it's probably going to end up selling out now because there are no other viable options on the market. And price to performance, yes, it's higher than we really would expect it to be, but it's kind of left without a choice for a lot of people. I always mention real world purchasing because it's easy for a YouTuber, a reviewer, or even us to just, theorize on the price of a card and say, don't get that. But what happens if you walk into a store? There are really no other options. If you don't want to get that overheating GPU, or if they don't have the 4090 that maybe you wanted, you're just left with what they have on the shelf. And let's say you just want a GPU. You're not going to wait. You're not going to pay a scalper. You may have to pick up that 4070 Ti because there aren't any other options. That's what I said about the 7900 XT versus the XTX. Of course, for $100 more, the XTX is what you should get if it wasn't overheating, of course. But walk into a store or look online, you're not going to find it in stock very easily, but you will find an XT, and a lot of people just end up getting it because they don't want to deal with that hassle. That's a very realistic scenario that I think most people go through. So that's going to happen to the 4070 Ti here. A lot of people are going to buy it because it's going to be simply the newest and best option available to them, even if it is probably overpriced. And that's going to be another big problem for AMD, especially if they have to go through a massive recall. It's going to hurt their brand even more and make NVIDIA even more dominant in this market space, meaning that prices will stay high as they are because people are not going to have a choice, unfortunately. All right, guys, so remember to subscribe, smash that like button, and I'll see you guys on the next video.